Creative work doesn't merely express what we already understand, it can reveal what we haven't yet been able to recognize or explain. However, creative activity doesn't automatically become meditation simply because it absorbs our attention. It only functions as meditation when we're using the craft to train our ability to focus. I became interested in meditation because I was fascinated by the idea of enlightenment. I didn't really know what enlightenment was, but I had heard Buddhist practices could lead to an awakening with deep insight about the nature of our reality. I wanted to know what that meant and whether I could experience it for myself. My teacher, great Zen Master Kim, pointed me in a specific direction. He explained that Zen connects enlightenment with the mind. He taught that if we want to understand who we are, we first have to understand or see our mind. By see, he didn't literally mean looking at an object or giving an explanation. He meant experiencing the nature of our mind directly. In Zen, this direct seeing is called enlightenment. Everything you've ever experienced has been known through your mind. You know the world through what you see, hear, feel, remember, and think. Even a sense that there's a world outside of you is something we only know through experience. Yet if I asked you, what is your mind? What would you point to? You might point to the part of you that thinks, your personality, or your brain. But each of those is something you know through your mind. None of them by itself answers the question completely. We use the mind in every moment, but the mind itself can be elusive. The central question is this: if the mind is involved in everything we experience and everything we do, how can we see it directly? When I first tried to practice, I assumed that sitting meditation was the path to enlightenment. When I tried meditating on my own, sitting was uncomfortable. My body resisted it, my attention wandered, and after a few attempts, I would usually stop. I began to think that meditation might require a temperament I didn't have. I thought I might have to withdraw from ordinary life, become a hermit, and devote myself completely to practice before I could make any real progress. But given my responsibilities and the circumstances of my life, that didn't seem possible. What eventually made meditation accessible to me was learning that movement itself could become meditation. In 2005, I joined the Zen and martial arts school that was founded by my teacher, great Zen Master Kim. At the end of each martial arts class, we sat in meditation for about 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes felt different than any of my earlier attempts at meditation. We had just spent the class training vigorously, learning unfamiliar techniques, and focusing on performing choreographed sequences of the moves that were called forms. The exercise reduced some of the physical restlessness I had been feeling, so when it was time to sit still, it felt easier. I hadn't suddenly become good at meditation. 5 minutes of sitting after martial arts training was just a more approachable place for me to start. After a few weeks of training like that, I started attending longer meditation classes and Dharma talks. We would sit and meditate for 45 minutes during those classes. The sitting was still really difficult for me, but I kept returning because my teacher was addressing the questions that had drawn me to Zen and meditation in the first place. I was always wondering, what's the point of life? What's my purpose here? And how could I possibly attain enlightenment? At that point, I still didn't know what it meant to see the mind. But the martial arts forms began to show me how my attention could be trained through action. And by doing that, my actions could become a form of meditation. In Zen martial arts, we practice choreographed forms. Each was made from a specific sequence of movements. Each form required the correct timing, posture, balance, and coordination. If my attention wandered, the form showed me immediately. I would forget the next technique, turn in the wrong direction, lose my balance, or disrupt the rhythm. The state of my mind was constantly revealing itself through the quality of my forms. To do the forms correctly, I couldn't follow any thought that was distracting me. My teacher explained why this worked. He said that a clear mind leads to clear thinking and clear action. He also taught that relationship works in the other direction. Clear action clears out thinking and restores clarity in the mind. He suggested that all of our actions should become a form of meditation, focusing on the movements as if they are the mantra. Sitting meditation gives us simplified conditions for training our attention. We limit our movement, reduce some of the demands from our surroundings, and place our attention on our breath, a sound, a koan, or a mantra. When the usual stream of thoughts carries our attention away, we return to that focal point. Each time we return, it strengthens our ability to focus. With greater focus, we can interrupt the thought patterns that become habitual. Instead of being carried away by our thoughts, we become more aware of our mind's activity and how it affects us. Moving meditation introduces more variables. The body has to respond, we have to make decisions and adjust as conditions change. Feeling clear while sitting in a quiet room is one thing, but our actions show whether we can remain focused and respond clearly, especially when something doesn't go as intended. When I forget part of a martial arts form or make a mistake, I could become frustrated, embarrassed, or critical of myself. The mistake may need to be corrected, but the frustration or self-judgment would pull my attention even further away from what I'm doing. The quicker I can recognize the reaction and let go of the judgment, the sooner I can return my attention to the movement and practice it again. A clear mind doesn't mean that thoughts and emotions stop. It means we aren't so consumed by them that we lose the ability to recognize what's happening and respond to it. This same pattern appears throughout ordinary life. We may say the wrong thing in a conversation, overlook an important detail at work, or make a mistake while completing a task. Whatever went wrong may need to be corrected, but our reaction can pull us further away from what needs to be done. We may become defensive, rush, give up, or keep repeating the same action without looking carefully at what needs to change. How we respond to a mistake is part of the practice. Sometimes intense and sustained concentration can lead to a meditative flow. Before I had even tried sitting meditation, I had felt a flow state at different times, like snowboarding or playing music or participating in sports. In those activities, my thoughts would become quieter. My attention became absorbed in what I was doing. And my movements seemed to happen through an intuitive feel rather than an intentional thought. At that time, I didn't know those experiences had anything to do with meditation, but those experiences taught me what meditative flow could feel like. However, we can also become absorbed while repeating a habit, distracting ourselves, or operating on autopilot. Being absorbed in an activity doesn't necessarily make it a meditation. Flowing through a movement can be valuable, but we can't force it or use that as the sole measure of whether a practice is working. Whether the movement flows or feels awkward, the practice remains the same. Notice when your attention wanders. And when you notice that's happening, simply return your focus to what you're doing. Then just focus on performing the next action as clearly as you can. Doing this consistently strengthens your ability to focus and brings greater clarity into everything you do. As part of my training, I also began visualizing the martial arts forms during my sitting meditation. My teacher called this mind training. Visualizing the choreography helped me remember and perform the movements more clearly. Each practice supported the other. Years later, I discovered that meditation and creative work could support each other in a similar way. When I began writing and making visual art as part of my teaching, I thought of creativity mainly as a way to communicate. I wanted to use my creativity as a way to convey the insights that I had gained through my practice and share them with other people. I was surprised at how much the creative process taught me about what I was trying to express. An idea can seem complete while it remains in your mind, but even when we feel like we completely understand it, the moment we try to turn that idea into a sentence, an image, a movement, or music, we begin to discover what's missing. You may write a sentence, but the words don't quite convey what you mean. A painting or a drawing might cause you to see something from a different perspective, or to observe something about a relationship between things that you hadn't noticed before. Playing a piece of music can carry a feeling that words couldn't quite reach. Creative work doesn't merely express what we already understand, it can reveal what we haven't yet been able to recognize or explain. This happens because creating requires a series of choices. Each choice gives the idea a specific form. When we look at the result, we can see more clearly if that works or how that idea might be developed. The process can also reveal when your attention is wandered. In this way, it can function as another form of moving meditation. Writing requires that you remain with a thought, emotion, or image long enough to give it accurate form. Visual art requires the same kind of attention through proportion, space, and the relationships developing in the image. My meditation practices also help when the creative process becomes stuck. If I try to force the work, my thinking becomes repetitive. I can circle the same idea, change a few words, or add more elements to an image without clarifying what I'm trying to express. Quite often, I use a short period of sitting meditation or mind training or moving meditation to interrupt that pattern. I just take a short break, meditate or train for a few minutes, and give myself some mental space. When I return, I can often recognize the next step more clearly. Sitting or moving meditation can help restore the clarity I need to be creative, while creating trains my ability to focus through action. Each practice supports the other. However, creative activity doesn't automatically become meditation simply because it absorbs our attention. It only functions as meditation when we're using the craft to train our ability to focus. By actively noticing when our attention is wandered, returning to what we're doing, and trying to make the next action more precise. Precision doesn't mean that everything we create has to be polished, perfect, or realistic. It means we're trying to make choices that more accurately express or accomplish what we're trying to do. Learning a craft is important because it requires repeated practice as well as increased precision and accuracy. We can't master a craft simply by understanding what we're supposed to do. We also have to develop the ability to focus closely enough to do it effectively and consistently. What we produce provides feedback. The difference between what we intended and what we actually produce shows us where our attention or our ability needs further development. Each time we return, adjust, and try again, we're not only developing a technical skill, we're training our ability to concentrate through our action. With repetition, some of the parts of the craft can become second nature. We no longer have to direct every part of the action through a deliberate thought. This doesn't mean we become inattentive or begin operating on autopilot. It means that the training has become part of how we move, see, hear, and respond. Our attention can remain with the work as a whole, and we can respond more directly to what is happening. The purpose of this practice isn't only to produce better art. Creative work can also teach us to be resilient when the work becomes difficult. If we can learn to respond to our mistakes without becoming overwhelmed, we can act with increased clarity and effectiveness more often. Some days the work will be good, other days it won't. Some days it will flow. Sometimes producing anything will be a struggle. The practice isn't only valuable when the work flows, it can be just as valuable when it doesn't. Returning to what we're doing when we're distracted, frustrated, or uncertain can actually be better for training our ability to focus than the moment where everything comes easily. The point isn't to create something amazing every single time. The point is to practice consistently so that we improve our craft, to become more precise and effective in our actions, and to strengthen our ability to restore our mental clarity. I was originally drawn to meditation by the possibility of enlightenment. I later learned from my teacher that enlightenment requires us to understand the true nature of our mind by seeing it directly. At first, I assumed this kind of understanding would come through some sort of extraordinary internal experience. Zen taught me that the key to enlightenment was to look more deliberately at what was already happening. Our mind is revealed in everything we do, how we respond, and what we create. It reveals itself through our movements. A sentence can reflect it. A brushstroke can give us a glimpse of it. Everything we do gives form to the mind within our experience. Eventually, this recognition extends beyond sitting meditation, martial arts, or creative practice. The recognition begins by seeing the activity of our mind at work in our world through all of our actions, interactions, and creations. This is usually the first step because we usually perceive the mind as something internal, but this helps us recognize that the mind isn't confined within us. A painting carries the artist's experience, the quality of the materials, the subject, and the conditions in which it was made. A single brushstroke can carry years of training and the influence of the people who taught it. Each action in creation always arises through relationships and conditions that extend beyond a single person. As our clarity develops, we can begin to see the world as more than just connections between apparently separate things. We can also begin to recognize that the boundaries that we draw between things, including the distinction between internal and external, arise within our mind. Everything we encounter is known through the mind. When we realize that the division between internal and external is not absolute, we can begin to recognize that nothing within our awareness can be separated from the mind that knows it. I began my search for enlightenment by looking for an experience that transcended ordinary life. Eventually, I realized I was looking in the wrong place. The mind had been revealing itself this whole time. In everything I did, everything I created, and everything I encountered. Zen practice gave me the clarity to see it. When we return our attention to our breath, a mantra, our movement, our words, or a brushstroke, each return strengthens our ability to focus and helps us restore clarity. Through that clarity, we begin to see that the mind moves through every distinction and division. It moves through every action, every creation, and every experience, connecting everything that's known.